Craig Valentine from Early to Rise Radio, and I am here with Eric Bach, performance coach and longtime friend and client. Listen, Eric, I want you to tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, Eric Bach, 36 years old. I live in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Live with my beautiful wife, Lauren, my daughter, Zoe, and my golden retriever. Been able to build a freedom-based fitness business where we help busy entrepreneurs look great naked without living in the gym with a data-driven coaching program that helps them unlock peak performance.
So you've worked with a lot of coaches, and you yourself are a coach, but a lot of people who even have coaches barely use them. You've done the opposite. You lean in, you ask lots of questions. What mindset did you bring to the coaching relationship that made all the difference?
The biggest thing is understanding that you have blind spots, even if you view yourself as an expert at what you do. And when you have those blind spots, that can often be the thing that limits you from knowing what to do to actually implementing that advice properly. And even when you're implementing, there's still things that you might not see that are there. And those small tweaks and adjustments that you think you know enough of, often the difference between you being at a level here and just exploding in terms of what you have financially, freedom, and what the business looks like.
Yeah. So what are some of the most powerful questions that you've learned to ask coaches? And you work with me and Coach Gavin and Coach Galel and Coach Daniel on our team. What were some of the things that you asked them that maybe you didn't, love the fact that you had to ask them the question? And how have those questions really changed the game for you?
I think one big thing would be, what do you view as the biggest constraint from my business looking at the outside, right? We can talk about business, we can talk about metrics, but based on what you see beyond all of that, right? Based on maybe the branding, things that you can't always quantify, what feels like a missing gap? And then when it comes to that, I often have a lot of ideas, and sometimes it's like, how do I wrangle all of these things?
Yeah.
And many times it'll be, okay, let's talk about these, and what would it look like now if it was simple? What would the simple solution look like? Because I think there's so much information that's out there, and it can be really overwhelming to know what I should actually focus on. And many times there's a conversation that brings ideas. And the job of a coach is often to, okay, let's cut out 90% of it and focus on this one thing that fixes that constraint. And so it's trying to get down to that simplicity and having that trust in the coach to be able to bring it to you.
Yeah. So I know you're a workhorse. I've known you for a long time. And how do the coaches rein you in? How do they take you from the wild horse that Eric, could be or was, and get you to be that lion leader and just dialed in and focused?
I think the biggest thing is actually building a business that is in alignment with what I truly value instead of getting distracted by so many other things. Because otherwise what happens, it's great to have a default where you just run through walls if you need it.
Yeah.
But if you're building something that is only 1% off and it grows and grows and grows, all of a sudden you have something you don't even recognize. And then you're out of alignment with your values and what actually matters to you. And that's where people feel trapped in their business. And so many times it's having a coach to help you get clear and kind of find out where those blind spots are based on what your values are and what the vision of the business really needs to look like.
So there's a lot of ways that we coach our clients. There's the coaching calls, there's the weekly accountability email, there's, sometimes daily texts and stuff like that. What are your preferred weekly rhythms and habits to make the most out of coaching?
Number one thing for me is having that weekly actually email check-in. There's incredible lessons, but it forces me to take a step back beyond maybe some of the metrics and things that I review and actually think, okay, was I successful based on what we set out for a successful week the previous? What happened that was good? What happened that was bad? What do we need to move forward? I think in many cases, there's so much emphasis that's placed on, again, just pushing forward, but never taking that step back to be like, what is actually working, what's not, and then course correcting that. Where I have previously had issues where I'm like, okay, cool, this is working, sprint forward, don't reflect on why it worked. And all of a sudden, system breaks. Why did it break? Oh, well, you stopped doing the thing that was actually driving it forward in the most effective way. Yeah. So having that aspect is really crucial. And then the individual calls with the coaches is really helpful. And one thing that's crucial about those is it's not always right into business. It's how are you? It's coaches that actually care. Yeah. It's not just like, hey, here's a system, here you go and implement it. It's like, no, it's like when you have a coach who actually cares about you as an individual, that helps maintain that alignment that we just talked about. And that's the foundation.
Yeah. So what was the thing that you came to us for coaching in the first place? And then what was one of the unexpected benefits from working with coaches?
Yeah, the biggest thing felt like, some level of misalignment because, I've had this business for a while and I've built some other businesses. And I'm like, why am I always building these different things? What am I running from potentially? Or what am I avoiding that I need to actually improve? And so one thing that really stood out, with all the coaches, with you, with Galel, with Craig, with Shannon, with Daniel, it's everyone has such high values and overall standards where I'm like, where are some of the standards maybe I'm not leveling up where I need to, whether it's, from a leadership perspective, which is one thing I kind of realized, like where can I step as a better leader, specifically in my business, in my family, and making sure that all these things are truly in alignment together.
Yeah. So one of the things that, put a smile on the coaches' faces after, even I think it was just a couple of weeks of coaching was, you were taking a Friday off to spend more with your family. What have been some of the big wins that you had since getting into the mastermind program?
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I was looking at this yesterday and just looking at my metrics like year over year, and we're up over 20% in terms of revenue. Profit margin is actually up 30%. So that's huge. And I'm working about 30% less. I can get most of my work done in about 4 hours a day, if not less, by building better systems, better teams. So I work less, make more, and can actually feel like I'm living true to the values that I really want with my family, with my business, and my life.
What was something that one of the coaches told you that you didn't want to hear?
Geez, which one do I pinpoint on this, right? I'm thinking of some conversations I had directly with Gavin, and basically like, hey, listen, like he's like, yeah, you're a racehorse, you have this gear, but is that really serving you? And there's a lot of identity for me that was always attached to that. I was like the small kid growing up. So for me, it was like, to be the best, you have to outwork the rest. And having that chip on my shoulder, which again, it can be a good thing, but it can also be a toxic thing if you're misaligned. And so it's been somewhat of like an ego shift and really seeing who I want to become, not just in business, but as a father, as a husband, and making sure that all these things are truly in alignment. And so that's challenged me. It's filling my schedule actually with things that are not work related and making sure that those are really implemented on a consistent basis, because otherwise what will happen is, even if there's not really a big issue in the business, I'll make one. I'll find one. And then I'll just start trying all this random stuff. And then pretty soon, like, hey, I worked 80 hours this week. Oh, yeah, these other things fell apart. So it's having that structure and that alignment.
How did becoming a better entrepreneur actually make you a better husband, father, leader in your personal life?
I think with becoming a better business owner, a big aspect of it is, again, having some of those values and that vision and truly living in alignment with that, because that sets the table for the way that we act. It sets the table for not just the way that we act, like decisions that we make that are going to compound over time. One thing that I've found so much as a parent is, kids don't always listen to what we say, but they will model what we do. And the same thing is true in business. And, for good, bad, whatever, I feel like I learned that lesson first in business and really started to see that like with my team and the way that I was showing up. I'm like, okay, how is this showing up in my personal life? Right? Like, is my presence here and the way that I'm conducting, meetings and so on and so forth with my team, how am I showing up then with my daughter? Over that time when I'm done with work, am I pulling up on Slack and finding up something new instead of like being present for those, few hours that I have, especially with a young kids. So that's been a big paradigm shift for me.
And then when you do hit a plateau, which we all do, how do you lean into the coaching team to break through on that?
First thing, send somebody a message on WhatsApp and then we really hit it in the emails. And then from there, it's like, let's book calls and like, let's really, put a level 10 effort into what this level 10 problem is and keep focused on that instead of like, what are these other problems that we could fix or that are issues, but they're not the biggest one. Like, let's focus on one thing at a time.
And then, so, I think I've probably known you for 10 years, I would imagine.
Something like that.
So you're clearly in it for the long game. I see a lot of people come in, go out, really, really quickly. What part of coaching helps make this a sustainable success for you?
I think the biggest thing is sustainable success comes down to the ruthless execution of the basics in many cases, right? I think there's so many different strategies that are out there, but if those strategies have a misaligned direction, it's not going to serve you. You might be off by 1% and then you're off completely in a different direction. And so I think a lot of it comes down to what's going to be sustainable, what's going to be in alignment with who you want to be, what's in alignment with your energy and what fills your cup. And when you have that sustainability in business and you're doing the right things consistently, that's how it compounds. That's how it grows. That's how it scales.
So what would you say to the entrepreneur who thinks they're too busy to have a coach?
Too busy. That's interesting. Because I was often that person for many years. Like, how can I be busy or wearing like a badge of honor, have this, unicorn vomit looking calendar. Right. And, ultimately having a full calendar is not a sign of success. It's that alignment. It's, are you truly congruent with the person you want to be? Is the business congruent with the message, with the value that you want to put in the marketplace? And when it's not, you can be busy, but for what? You're just going to drain that battery, and you might be able to do it when you're 25, but pretty soon you're going to look back and be like, what did I actually build here?
Yeah, absolutely. So last question here is, what lessons have you taken from the business coaching and then applied into the coaching that you do with, men over 40 that want to get, look good naked?
One, the check-in process is so thorough because it has that level of introspection, which is very crucial for people learning how to become self-sufficient in anything they do. Right. So for example, when the question is, what went well this week? What do we need to do to go forward? Next is my brain personally turning. I'm like, okay, these are the things that I'm improving on, and what action step can I personally take? And so when people come to me and they have a problem, awesome. I want to give you the direction and I want to point you in that way. And I'll show you many of the things. I'll be very directive at first, but I want you to learn that skill set in a way that applies to you. Because ultimately, if I can teach teach people how to become self-sufficient in what they do, we're getting great results. And, we still all value and benefit from accountability regardless of how much we know.
Yeah.
Right. And what I found from a business perspective is the people that stay with me longest get the best long-term results, because when you have something that's working, why change?
Absolutely. Eric, where will people find you on Instagram and your website?
Instagram, Bach Performance, BACH Performance. We can all spell that one. So over on IG, send me a message there, and then BachPerformance.com. Hit me up anytime.
Awesome, man. Mostly men over 40 or men over 30?
I would say mostly men over 35, but every year I keep stacking another year, and demographic gets a little bit older. So
awesome. This is Craig Ballantyne from Early to Rise Radio and the creator of the Unstoppable Mastermind, of which Eric is a member. If you are interested in learning more about our coaching, just drop the word coaching down below this video.